Islam Makhachev, guys, who's he going to fight next? What's he going to do next? Now, I know the answer to this. This is a rhetorical question so that I can come in and answer it, but are you up to speed? Are you up to speed? I mean, him and Volkanovski were going back and forth. Everybody did everything right, particularly Volkanovski. Right, Volkanovski had something hot, and he kept on fanning the flames, and he was adding to it. Volk really did a great job on that, and Islam did what Islam does, which, man, I'm not going to back down from you, but we just did this. Right, not for nothing. We just did what you're talking about doing, but I'll do whatever they want me to do. It was fun. In the wake of that, we get two announcements, okay? Just prior to the match, and I'm just giving you guys a timeline to remind you, but just prior to the match, it gets announced to us, the audience, that Gaethje's going to fight Fedzaev. That's a big deal. Really big deal, particularly if Fedzaev can come out on top of that. On the other side of it, we find out that Benny's going to fight Charles. Okay. Somebody decides within our media that Charles versus Benny is the number one contender. I don't have a problem with that, and that might be right. But if we're telling the story accurately, go back to what I said 5 seconds ago. Somebody decided within our industry. This was not said by Dana White, so you understand. Dana White did not come out and say Charles versus Benny is a number one contendership, and it's a big deal. It's a big deal because what if Charles wins? Are they just throwing him back in there? Okay. I don't know that that's a bad idea, but I'm sharing with you that that's different. If Charles wins and Fedzaev wins, I think there's going to be a strong push for Fedzaev just by example. Now, let's go back to Benny, okay? Benny and Islam need to match up. And Benny hasn't done a great job of this, and he's not going to. It's not what Benny does. But Benny's got a buddy named Chael. I'm going to take this for him, okay? Don't forget, Benny was supposed to fight Islam. That was Benny's fight. You guys might remember that thing got scrapped, and the next thing you know, Bobby Green's filling it on short notice, and the next thing you know, Dana White's going to rebuild it, but Joe Rogan tells him not to, and we're never told why. It was a really interesting little carrot they dangled. You guys remember this? Dana White comes to the bully pulpit. Someone, I think it was Kevin Iole, teased him up and says, hey, are you going to remake Benny versus Islam? And Dana says, I was gonna, and Joe Rogan just grabbed me and told me not to. That was just interesting. Why did he not? I've always wondered that. And then two, how does that work? I mean, is that a common thing? Does Joe leave the booth and then he pops in and tells Dana what he thinks they should do in matchmaking? Like, there was just something about that I thought was interesting. I wish that would have been paid off to the audience, but I'm reminding you they have a history. Sure they do. And Dana came out, and this one was a little bit of a surprise for me, but he said, making sure you guys know this, because this story's been jumping all over. Trust me on this, guy. I got the research down. Dana said, if Volkanovski goes down and beats Rodriguez, he will rebook Volkanovski versus Islam. Did you know that? Now, here's what a lot of you think he said, but you're wrong. Here's what a lot of you think he said. If Volkanovski goes down and he beats Rodriguez and Islam wins his next fight, I'll rebook it. That's not true. That's not true. I believe that that's accurate. I'm not maintaining for you that Islam's going to be able to just sit out until wintertime and Volk and Rodriguez are going to go at it somewhere around July. I'm just stating for you that it wasn't stated. And I think it does matter. It's a very precarious timing. That, and I almost think in hindsight we could do it again. Perhaps it wouldn't have happened this way. But precarious timing I speak of is that Fedzaev Gaethje gets announced. Volk Islam happens and turns out to be really good. Now a lot of the world wants a rematch. Charles and Benny gets booked. I don't know that it was supposed to go that way because Islam's in a really interesting spot. Islam's got to wait. Wait for what? Now Islam came out and there was some piece of interesting drama that Dan Hooker brought us as it pertained to Islam, the USADA rule, and IV use while in New Zealand. there was a very interesting thing. The story went that Islam was given an IV after the weigh-in. And therefore, if true, is a cheater. And furthermore, should be suspended. Timeout. Just so you understand. We could find out right now if Islam IV'd or not, and we don't need to ask him. Just so you understand, okay? He had his shirt off. We could very easily go grab the frame. I've got screens right over here behind me. A bad guy. I could grab the frame and I could zoom in. And I could just check his vein and tell you if he had IV'd or not. But the story that if he IV'd, he therefore broke the rule, that's not true. That's not true. And I'm not telling you he did. I'm not telling you if he didn't. What I am saying for you, that's just not accurate. That's not the way it goes. You're allowed to IV. IV is not a substance. Say again, Ryan.
No IVs are allowed in Western Australia.
Per USADA?
For the Western Australia rules.
Really? Okay, guys. So this just in case you couldn't, that was the voice of my producer, Ryan Parsons. If you guys couldn't hear this, I got to repeat this, though. What I was about to say for you, and I would be very accurate, is what the USADA rule is, which is you can IV. IV is not a substance. It is a form of administration. They limit how much IV fluid you can have. So the mere fact, if you zoomed in on his vein, the point that I was previously making, and you saw that he did, in fact, IV, I'm sure it would not disqualify you. And that rule is very slippery, in my opinion. I hear people come out and tell you what the rule says. I can tell you what the rule says. Give a goddamn. What does it mean? That's the part that people always seem to get wrong. It's not for you to tell me. One side can have an opinion, and if I dispute it, then we must go to a disinterested third party known as a judge. But it is very relevant. Because when I read that rule, the person can have X amount of cc's. It used to be 30. I've heard it's down to 10. But you got to understand that. They are allowed to have it, but they can only have this amount. Well, according to the rule, as I read, I could put that in this arm. I could stop at whatever that number is, and then I could put one in this arm. And when I'm done with that, I can come back to this arm. I tell you, it doesn't say within a 24-hour period. It doesn't say within an hour period. It doesn't say within a week period. It says at a time. It's a very, very poorly worded rule, which was the only point I was going to make, and then I was going to lay out. Now, Ryan has just waited and told me over the top of USADA is a rule for Western Australia that you cannot IV at all. Now, I must tell you, just right, you guys saw this is happening in real time, but I will tell you, you can always be more stringent. That's the way the rules work. Every commission works that way, right? For example, you can elbow a downed opponent, but if a commission wants to say you can't, like New Jersey does, by example, they can always be more stringent. They can't be looser, but they can tighten things. You guys might remember Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather had ended up in this very jam, and it turned into Bob Bennett versus Travis Taggart. One of my favorite fights. One of my favorite fights of the last decade or so was Bob Bennett versus Travis Taggart. Now, the media wasn't too interested in these guys, and you didn't know who they were, so it didn't really catch on. But if these guys would have had a level of notoriety, this was going to be one hell of a battle. Because Bob Bennett, who was the ED in Nevada, where Floyd resides, said that Floyd cannot do this. USADA came in and gave a permission slip after the fact, which is highly irregular. They can do it, though. It's not illegal. I'm not claiming foul ball. I'm telling you it's irregular. They came in after the fact and issued a post-action therapeutic use exemption for the IV. Okay, but who wins? Who wins? And I, Chael, pretending to be a lawyer here, I don't believe it would have been USADA, and USADA did. Bob Bennett had to back down purely because the media let this go, purely because you don't know who these two are. But God, if you did, Taggart versus Bob Bennett, I mean, these were two juggernauts. These were going to be two juggernauts, and Bob said, it's my state, it's my rules. Here's what it says, and I say he violated. And Taggart came in and said, I give him an exemption after the fact. And Bob said, I don't give a damn, you're in my state. Now, if they would have gone before a judge, Bob would have won. But they didn't. He backed down because the media let it go because you guys don't care about them. I'm only sharing for you. Be very interesting. Because if you tighten the rules, and now Ryan is right, and it's a rule within Western Australia, then only that jurisdiction would have a say in this matter. So let's say that Western Australia, just for the sake of getting attention, which believe me, people in authority do it all the time, decide to hold a hearing. Do you think that our young hero from Dagestan is going to get on an airplane and fly out there? Do you think he's going to bring representation for a courtroom speaking a language that isn't native to him? Do you see the problem? Do you see the headache here? Do you see where this turns into a massive cluster? And if Western Australia, for whatever reason, would like to seek said attention, and they hold their kangaroo court on a day that he doesn't come, so they find him guilty, what are they going to do? Who's going to enforce it? That's what you're asking yourselves. I will answer that question for you. One jurisdiction is to adopt the rule of the brother and sister jurisdictions. So if he were banned in Western Australia per the rules, he would be banned everywhere, which doesn't mean it's something going to hold up. Because one thing we do in this sport is we fiercely adhere to the rules that we make up on the spot. But the rules are as clearly as Chael P. You're an expert. Can you believe how good I am? This information just came to me. Can you even believe it? I pulled out Travis Taggart. I pulled out Bob Bennett. I pulled out USADA versus Nevada. I pulled in 10 milligrams versus 30 Western Australia. Brother and sister commissions, a term you guys have never even heard. Do you ever sit back? This is a true question because I have wondered. Do you ever just sit back? Thank the Almighty that you have access to my mind